Hello everyone and welcome to the course. Nikolai and I are so excited for you to have joined us, and we can't wait to start teaching you all about Google Analytics, how it's going to help boost your sales, keep costs down, and really everything that Google Analytics is going to be able to do. What are you going to gain and what are you going to learn from taking this course? Well, we're first going to show you the fundamentals and the basics of Google Analytics. We're then going to show you how to use Google Analytics to really drive in more sales for whatever it is that you're trying to drive sales into, whether it's your business, maybe it's a product, maybe it's multiple products. We're going to show you how to use Google Analytics to drive in more sales.
Thanks, Joe, for that introduction. And I just want to remind you guys before we get into the nitty-gritty that this is based on a full $200 e-course on Udemy. And since you guys have really sought out help and tried to improve your own skills in Google Analytics, we're offering you a really exclusive deal to get it for just $19. Click the link in the description below. And until then, enjoy the course. In this lecture, I'm going to teach you about the traffic game, how traffic flows, and how we can use Google Analytics to make more out of the traffic that we get to our website as advertisers. So, first things first, advertising is foremost a traffic game. We take traffic from another site with a lot of users, and then we keep this new traffic on our website. We try to keep it as long as we can to generate a sale or a conversion, a form fill. And then when this new traffic leaves our site early, which oftentimes it does, then we use tools such as Google Analytics or other web analytics tools to figure out what may be causing this kind of early dropout or abort. Next thing, the average attention span of the average person is down year over year. So just looking at the attention span statistics, the average attention span in 2015 is 8.25 seconds versus 12 seconds just 15 years ago. And note this, internet browsing statistics, that percent of page views that last less than 4 seconds is 17%. So 17% of page views, or when a user views a page, is less than 4 seconds. That's a very short amount of time to capture their attention and get them interested and wanting to purchase what you offer on your website. Traffic flows. Traffic doesn't like to stay in a place. Think of it as very fluid and flowing. The reason is the short attention span that we're just talking about. People don't like focusing on one thing for too long, especially if there isn't anything particularly interesting to grab their attention. Analytics helps us figure out which parts of our website are not clicking with users and how different changes that we make to our website affect the engagement and the time that users spend on our pages. So, for example, here's another statistic. 55% of visitors spend less than 15 seconds on your website. That means that you have 15 seconds to, on average, for half the users coming to your website to kind of lead them in and really make your best case for what your product is about. You've got to tweak your website to optimize those first 15 seconds, or as we just saw, the first 4 seconds. It's just that first initial bit on a website that's incredibly important. And as we are making these changes, Google Analytics allows us to measure our progress. Getting traffic costs time or money. The reason that we're so concerned about improving engagement and improving the return of each user that comes to our webpage is because traffic is not free. Don't let anybody tell you that it's free, right? Some people would say, an email list or social media is free because you don't pay for each click that comes to your webpage. But on average, not sure what the actual statistic is, but it takes months or even years to build up a blog or a significant following to get that kind of strategy. And if you opt for like a more short-term strategy, such as pay-per-click advertising, AdWords, that took money. The average cost per click on Google is $1 or $2 on the search network, according to Google's own statistics. So whether you're spending time or money, traffic still costs something. We have to be very careful what we do with traffic to maximize our return. And once again, I really want to hammer in this point. Analytics allows you to get the most out of your advertising spend so you can start earning and generating a return. That's the basic of the traffic game that we're going to be looking really in depth at, and how to use analytics to lower the cost of advertising and to earn more from our advertising efforts. Thank you for joining me on this course, and I'll see you guys on the next. Now, I want to discuss the objectives and aims of this course and what Google Analytics can do for you in terms of your advertising. The two major aims of this course are to increase your sales using Google Analytics data and to decrease your costs using Google Analytics data. Along the way, I'll teach you some advanced techniques to figure out which buttons visitors press before they leave and which parts of your websites are making them stuck and want to click that close now button. For example, on a landing page such as this, we can add tracking to buttons and figure out, did users press it on the top or did users press it on the bottom? Where's their attention really going? How are the colors affecting the conversion rates and how much money we are making? Are they really clicking on the navigation links, or should we remove them? Do they prefer to scroll down the page? How far are they scrolling down the page? And similarly, we can see the kind of events that have occurred. So we can see how many people have clicked the sign up button versus how many people click the download button. If we have a free kind of copy that or an ebook or something like that we're trying to get them to download so we can get them into our sales funnel. However, I want to kind of cover what you shouldn't expect from Google Analytics. We can tell what's happening. We can tell what buttons they're pressing. We can tell what they're doing. We can tell what's working and what's not, but we can't tell why that's the case, right? We can tell what's working, but we can't tell why it's working. We can tell what's not working, but we can't tell why it's not working. Why did users leave? Why didn't they click the contact us button, for example? That is something that's more in the realm of user testing, which should occur side by side your web analytics. You should get real users looking at your website from your target niche or audience. In the best case scenario, you are the target audience for your course. But regardless, with the what data, which is what we're getting from Google Analytics, you can still make educated decisions. And the better your data, with the more advanced analytics that we're going to cover, the better the decisions that you can make. That's it for this lecture, and I'll see you in the next one about specific and how that helps boost your sales. Bye-bye. Hope you guys are liking the course so far. You've learned a lot of valuable marketing stuff for Google Analytics. I just want to remind you guys that in the description, there is a link for over 90% off the full e-course on Udemy. Go ahead and click that if you haven't already, or else continue with the course. Now, in this lecture, I want to talk to you about why specific sells. That is, being really specific and precise, why that sells and how you can use Google Analytics. Are you not sold on specific yet? Well, let's take the example of a Udemy teacher who earned $18,000 in his first month. His course was on iOS 9 programming in Arabic. If you're not familiar with that, that's just iPhone programming for the applications on an iPhone. And he targeted a blog for programmers in Arabic. This guy was pretty bold. He had a budget of around $1,500. So what he did was he borrowed $900 more from friends to try to get a spot on this blog for programmers in Arabic. It was one of the top blogs for programmers in Arabic. So obviously it was a little more expensive to advertise on it. But what he did was, once he got that money, he knew that this was the most specific course available. And people needed a course that they could understand more easily around that region. So he took that $2,400, and in the first month, just a month, he made $18,000. And each month after month, until iOS 10 comes around and this course becomes outdated, you'll make another $18,000 per month. So that is an example, a very good example of the kind of benefits you can reap possibly from being very specific. Now, let's say, okay, I agree with that. Why wouldn't you want to be specific then? Well, there's a couple reasons when it comes to advertising. If you're too specific, you will get a lower traffic volume. And, the less people you can get, the less money potentially you can make with your advertising effort or campaign. Also, oftentimes being more specific in programs such as Google AdWords means higher costs. So, for example, if you're targeting a specific state or region of the United States instead of the whole country, the actual average cost per click or the suggested bid is higher. So you have to pay more money to reach a more targeted and specific audience. So those two reasons, lower potential traffic volume and higher costs, scare advertisers away. And for example, I want to give you a really concrete look at why too specific might hurt at the same time. So we could take a balanced look, the kind of considerations between being too specific and not being specific enough, and how we can copy and achieve results like that of the Arabic iOS 9 programming course. So here's a keyword research for 2 states within the United States. So if you're not familiar, there's 50 states within the United States. So 2 is just kind of a small subset, especially since these are not the most populated states, Oregon and Washington. So we're trying to organize a sign campaign for another project that I was doing, and the average monthly searches that we're looking at for like restaurant signs and business signs is so low. It's 50 searches in Google, and Google is the number 1 or 2 site in the world in terms of the traffic that's coming to it. But because this is such a specific campaign in terms of advertising, there's just not enough traffic to really be able to scale our efforts. So even if we're making money from it, first of all, it'll take a longer while to test because it'll take a whole month just to get 50 searches, and it just won't be scalable, and so we can't scale the profits, so it's not useful. However, not looking at those cases being too extremely specific, in general, the more specific you're targeting, the better. The reason is, taking a look back at this targeting, we can try out this really specific targeting. We can say maybe it'll be a little slow, but maybe Google AdWords projections are wrong because they're just trying to make a few more bucks from us from these projections and try to get us to expand our campaign. Now, in this case, the company that we're working with was located around the region, so it made sense to be specific. And what I want you to do is to move from specific, then broaden your scope. Being specific in general will bring better conversion rates. Why? Well, for example, if we just target these 2 states which are located right next to each other, we can pick a landmark, like, for example, the famous public market in Seattle. And then we can say, something related to our business. Maybe we made a sign there, something like that. Something that people around this region will be familiar with. And we've already established trust there. So being specific brings better conversion rates in general. Move from too specific to slightly more broad, and keep expanding your scope until you reach the perfect targeting. That is what you want to do. Google Analytics will show you the results from changing and making changes to your either online pay-per-click campaigns or social media campaigns, etc. So you will measure the bounce rate and the average time on the page as you change the targeting options in your advertising campaigns. A lower bounce rate and longer average time on page generally will be followed by more conversions. The kind of settings that I want you to play with, for example, in pay-per-click advertising, are the locations that you're targeting your ads to display in, the language that your ads displaying in, the demographics. If you're selling a very high-end product, you probably want to target people in the higher percentiles of income brackets. And finally, the time of day. This also has to do with the location, because during separate times of the day, people will be at work or at home getting ready for bed. And then also experiment with using longer keywords if you're doing pay-per-click advertising using Keyword Planner. We'll talk a little bit about that later. But for now, just realize that Google Analytics is the tool to measure the effect of the changes that you're making to your website. So for example, going back to this kind of keyword planner view, which just tells us the search traffic for different keywords per month on Google, we can then measure our results. So if we just plug in these keywords into our campaign, and then we'll use Google Analytics to see, is it really performing like the expectations from Google said it would? Or are we doing better? Are we doing worse? Do we need to broaden it up? Or can we keep it very specific and focus on those great conversion rates? One of the things that we just talked about was a lower bounce rate. That's one of the things we want to get more sales, because more conversions means more sales. Why do you want a lower bounce rate? Well, first of all, if you're not familiar with bounce rate is simply the percent of people who leave after visiting your page. So you have to think about your website in terms of conversion rates. A 10% conversion rate means that 1 in 10 visitors will purchase from you. The higher the rate, the cheaper it is to acquire a customer. A bounce means that the user left without interacting in the page. Bounces will never turn into conversions. So when we're looking at that 10% conversion rate, which means 1 in 10 visitors will purchase from you, that's only out of the visits that are not bounces, right? Because a bounce will never purchase from you. A lower bounce rate means a higher and larger potential audience that could convert. So a lower bounce rate makes it easier to get conversions. Now you might say, wow, that's a very abstract explanation. Let's look a little bit more into the numbers. So let's do that. Let's compare 2 different examples and see how a lower bounce rate helps our conversions. So let's say in both examples, 100 visitors come to our site. If we have a 60% bounce rate, there's 60 bounces. So if 100 visitors came and there's 60 bounces, then there's 40 real visits left, because bounces are visits where the users just leave. So we're only looking at the visits that are not bounces. And if our conversion rate is 10%, then out of those 40 real visits, we will get 4 purchases, because 10% of 40 is 4. Without looking at the bounce rate, this looks like a 4 out of 100, or a 4% conversion rate. So if we don't take into account the bounce rate, it looks like we're getting a lot lower conversion rate than we are. You have to remember, we're excluding these bounces because bounces will never turn into conversions. Now compare this 4% conversion rate to if we lower the bounce rate by 20%. So remember, last time we had a 60% bounce rate. Let's look at the math. If we have a 40% bounce rate, 40% bounce rate out of 100 visitors means 40 bounces. 100 visitors minus 40 bounces is 60 real visits. If our conversion rate is still 10%, out of the 60 real visits, we'll get 6 purchases. So by dropping our bounce rate by 20%, from 60% to 40%, we get 2 more purchases for the same amount of advertising spend, right? Because we had 4 purchases here, now we have 6 purchases. So between 6 and 4 purchases, that's a 50% increase in sales and revenue just by lowering our bounce rate. That is the power of a bounce rate in terms of Google Analytics. And Google Analytics is the framework where we can look at how different changes are impacting our bounce rate, because we have seen how much a bounce rate can impact sales and revenue. That's it for this lesson, guys, and I'll see you in the next one. Bye-bye. Once more, guys, just want to remind you that there is a full deal to get 91% off of the full course. It helps support what me and Joe are doing here on YouTube, trying to provide free, valuable education on Google Analytics. And we can also answer and support you one-on-one in the course. I'll see you there. Welcome back, guys, to this Google Analytics course. Next, I want to walk you through a case study of how, starting from a specific, as we learned before, sold a $5,000 sign with just $56 in marketing outlay. So we followed just one principle, which is super important to sell the sign. That's start from specific, then slowly increase the breadth of your targeting. So we were specific in two different ways. First, with our location targeting. We focused on just 2 of the 50 states in the United States of America that were nearby the company we were working for, which was a sign company. With a bid of just $1 on Google AdWords, meaning the cost we're paying per click to our website, we were only getting about 4 to 5 impressions per day. So this strategy by itself did not work. But then we increased the breadth of targeting until we got 12 clicks per day at about $1 each still. So it only took 56 clicks to generate a $5,000 sale of a sign. The reason it was so important to start from just those 2 locations is that by being more specific about the location targeting, we can focus in our advertising messaging on something that the locations will know pretty well that maybe other locations don't, and then already establish trust there, and plus have more familiarity. So we're kind of leveraging what these kind of regions will already know. This is a strategy that you can repeat too, by just starting from a very specific location targeting. Do some research about which areas might be best for your niche, and then from there, build and slowly increase the breadth of your targeting. And so the next thing that we did was we played with specificity in ad groups. So for 2 different kind of ad groups in AdWords, we had one where we brought them to a page where they picked the type of sign they were interested in. For example, neon signs. And then we brought them to another where we picked this type of sign for them. So for example, if the advertisement said neon sign, we brought them to a page with neon signs. Because the second ad was more specific, it was more likely to generate a sale. Few people will search super specifically on Google, Bing, or Yahoo without some intent to make a purchase. And once again, as we're making these changes, we can monitor the data in Google Analytics. Now, I can't disclose exactly what the results in Google Analytics were for this particular campaign, as that's kind of confidential information. But one of the kind of key things that we saw was that bringing them to the more specific page did increase the bounce rate slightly, but what it did also was increase the average time on page. So we kind of played around with which one was more worthwhile. That is a lower bounce rate, which we've already looked through the math that can really help us with lowering the cost per sale, or increasing the average time on page, which just means we have the user looking at more and more of our information. Because remember, the average time on a page is, for 55% of internet users, is less than 15 seconds. So the takeaway from this kind of campaign is start from specific. Don't try to boil the ocean. Start small and expand your targeting if there's no response, measuring the response with what? Bounce rate, average time on page, using Google AdWords until there is a response. That's it for this lecture, guys, and I'll see you on the next one. So let's say you get a lot of bounces in your campaign, and you've viewed this from your AdWords or your analytics data that the bounce rate's pretty high, and you've compared it to the average bounce rates for different kinds of sites that I've included as an external resource. So you've decided that, maybe it's a little too broad of a campaign. One of the things that you can kind of play around with is keyword match types. This is available in most pay-per-click advertising platforms such as Bing Ads or Google AdWords. Taking a look at Google AdWords, I'll show you an example webinar that I've marketed before. So there's 3 different kinds of match types, and the first type is broad match. So broad match would be something without quotation marks, so just the word. For example, if we wanted to add the keyword business ideas as a broad match, then we would just use this and then add it. And broad match means that when someone types into Google, so if we go to google.com, so when someone types into Google anything kind of similar to business ideas, then our advertisement will come up. So it could be something like any of these kinds of suggestions that Google thinks is similar. So it could be like business ideas for college students, or it could be even something as irrelevant as worst business ideas for college students. And it's a lot less likely that these kinds of ideas or search terms will really be relevant to our ad. And then the next kind of match type is phrase match, which is just quotation marks. And so that means we have to have the specific phrase in our search term, so it can't be like separated. So for example, back in broad match, it could have been business model generator, idea generator for business. As long as it has those two words in it, then it is okay to display our ad for it. So we would have our ad displayed for this search term, even if our ad is really about business ideas. And this is somewhat relevant, but perhaps it can get stretched. So if we have a phrase match, business ideas, then it has to include the phrase business ideas. So it could be like great business ideas or bad business ideas or anything similar. Then there's exact match, which is in brackets. And what exact match means is it can't be anything but those exact terms. So if we have an exact match of market research, then we have to see market research for our ad to display. And so some of these companies could have picked an exact match, but we wouldn't know. Anyhow, when you're designing your campaign, these three different options range in specificity. So if you have a broad match, then it's the least specific and most broad, and oftentimes the most irrelevant with the highest bounce rates. If you have a phrase match, it's in between, and if you have an exact match, it's oftentimes too specific to bring the amount of traffic for the right price. So oftentimes I veer for phrase match, which just gives us, pretty closely related ideas. Here's what happens in AdWords, and here's how you know if your match type is really working for you. So let's say we're trying to market a Udemy course, right? And we drive some traffic of around 200 clicks or 200 sessions. And so we'll take a look at the exact match search queries. So how we do that is we go to the left, scroll past audience, scroll to acquisition under AdWords, make sure you have them linked. And then if you're unsure how to do that, please post a discussion question. And then go to search queries under AdWords, and then it'll display all the exact search terms that individual customers or potential customers typed into Google for your ad to be displayed. Now, since I use broad matches for these keywords for the search term Udemy, my ads were displayed oftentimes with the most generic sounding keywords possible, which isn't necessarily the best thing, but also brings the cheapest traffic. So once again, there's this balance between expensive traffic and too expensive or being like too broad. To learn more about that, check out AdWords Math. But for now, we're looking at what we can do in analytics for our advertising account. And if you scroll down and keep going right to see what kind of terms are triggering your ad, and they start to look very relevant, like best small business ideas in Pakistan or Excel Udemy. So these search terms are never going to, or almost never going to, really result in a purchase, because someone who's looking for this exact of a lecture for Excel is probably not looking for business training, for example, at the same time, because they probably already registered for this course and they already set some time aside for learning the stuff from this lecture. Regardless, that was only a penny, so it's not a big deal. And someone who's looking for the features comparison of lynda.com versus Udemy, they might see, well, like, nice ad, I might like to learn that course, but they wouldn't be just as likely to buy. So, keep scrolling through and ask yourself, does it make sense that my ad would display for these search terms? And if it doesn't, really consider changing the match type. See, these are like misspells, so it's okay for misspells, and that might help sometimes, but For example, I don't want to display for Jerry Bainfield on Udemy. He's a great instructor, but if someone's looking for his courses, they probably have a lot more customer loyalty with him and would be less likely to buy a course from me. So this is just one way to find out whether your match types are too specific or too broad. And keywords are one of the most important things for deciding whether your campaign is specific enough or too specific or too broad. So pay attention to AdWords search queries to determine the targeting. See you in the next lecture. Hope you guys are liking the course so far. You've learned a lot of valuable marketing stuff for Google Analytics. I just want to remind you guys that in the description, there is a link for over 90% off the full e-course on Udemy. Go ahead and click that if you haven't already, or else continue with the course. Now, as an advertiser, another strategy to use to get more specific is to focus on potential customers that have already purchased a competitive or existing offering of a competitor. And there's two different ways to do this. One is in AdWords or Bing ads, and the other is in Facebook ads. Both are quite useful ways to do it, and so we'll go through each. And then finally, we want to look at how to analyze the data that we're going to get from comparing these very specific kind of user types to the general kind of traffic that we're getting on our website. And we're going to compare, are the bounce rate lower? If the bounce rate isn't lower, then the issue is that these more targeted kind of users will cost us more per click. And so if there's barely a difference, then it's oftentimes not worthwhile to spend more for that strategy, but it's definitely worth some time testing and considering. So first, let's walk through how to do it on Facebook ads. Once you're creating a new ad on Facebook, this is in the ads interface, and so you will just look for interest of the previous people. If you were selling a product about how to get rich or something, we'll just look for the biggest players in that kind of niche by Googling it. One of the biggest is just Ramit Sethi, which is just I will teach you to be rich is what his website is called. And so if we're selling something about how to get rich and this guy has successfully sold that, then it's worth looking at the people who have liked his page on Facebook because they've either previously purchased from him or they at least admire his kind of product and would be interested in something similar. That doesn't mean for 100% of the time that since they buy it from him, they'll buy from you, but it does make it more likely. Similarly, there's Pat Flynn, another kind of money guru. And so there we go. We have 2 or 3 kind of figures that people have liked on Facebook to define their interest categories. Now, a note, these are only available for demographics as in the location of the United States as of now. So if we try to do it for a different country, then it won't let us do that. But that's pretty simply how you would try to target users who have purchased something from a competitor before. Now, doing this in AdWords is a little trickier. So first we have to figure out who the kind of competitors are. We have to do the same thing for Facebook. So we'll just say, Ramit Sethi and Pat Flynn. And then so when we're creating our ad group, then we'll simply create another right now. Here we'll go into an example campaign. And let's say, we have a site about a new system for saving money. So then we would just write a sample ad. It doesn't really matter what the ad says for now because this is just an example. But what we would pay attention to is the keywords that we're entering would be Ramit Sethi, or oftentimes what will work is if you have particular products from these different people. So for example, if you look at Ramit, he has this product called Earn 1K. And so we'll also include that as a keyword. So if someone's searching for his product, then they're likely in the market for another competitive offering. And so if we can provide a product that's just as good as his, we have a chance of capturing that market as well. And then Pat Flynn, and perhaps she has some kind of similar product. The reason that it's a little harder with AdWords than Facebook is because there's a lot more flexibility with AdWords in some sense, in that in Facebook, you couldn't target people who, for example, earn 1K, because that's not a big enough page to generate that kind of traffic that they would suggest it. So you really only can do that on AdWords. At the same time, there's kind of a drawback there that you wouldn't get as much traffic. So let's say we go ahead and did that for Pat Flynn, or we can actually just go ahead and type that in. So Pat Flynn, courses. Wonder if she has a course. Not exactly sure. So it looks like she might. Okay, resources, start here, podcasts. Should be clearly have a product. It might just be a blog only. And so sometimes that's the case, if it's just a blog only, then we'll just keep it to the regular keyword. But if they have any products and they're a competitor, when someone's searching for their product, they're in the stage that they're not 100% set on buying from them. So you have a chance of capturing that potential market. Once you have that done, you just finish creating your campaign, like I've shown you in the Jumpstart. And then once we have that done, we want to compare the campaign where we use likely potential customers, like we're talking about, versus customers in general. So let's take an example where for marketing a Udemy course, we take people who have searched for Udemy courses before versus just a general audience that we get from SEO and a more organic search and how we're just regularly discovered. Now, since this is Udemy and Udemy is a big site, a lot of the organic search is people who have already searched Udemy in Google and are already on the Udemy site. But bear with me for a second. So let's pretend that, this Udemy keyword kind of campaign that we've narrowed down to is the equivalent of the results that we've gotten from looking at the customers of a competitor. To build a segment, or to view this, you need to build a segment first. And so how you do that is under AdWords or Analytics, you just go down to where you see the percentages and the little kind of icons, click plus. And then you want to build a new segment. This assumes that you've already linked your AdWords to your Analytics. If you haven't, you just go under admin. And then once you're under admin, then there will be an option to do so. However, I've already done so in my account. I think it'll still show up. Yeah, so you just go under property, and on the right property, you would go to AdWords linking, and then it should automatically kind of know which account because it's both, a Google product. And if you're bringing traffic from Yahoo or Facebook, for Facebook, you might have to look under social sometimes. And for Yahoo or Bing, it should still be under paid search. Anyhow, so let's assume you've done it from Google. It's a little easier because this is Google's product as well. And then we just go to traffic sources. And then depending on if you want to just look at that campaign, then we'd look at, what the campaign name is. I think it was just like campaign number 2. So and it was just campaign number 2. And so that would be all the traffic from that campaign. Make sure your campaign just contains that competitor segment. Otherwise, you might have to narrow it down all the way to keyword, where you just pick these 3 keywords. And so that would allow you to look at the bounce rate from those results. I've already done that, so go ahead, finish that. And so here is the general users that just excludes my location and excludes returning users to my course versus the specific new users that are acquired using the Udemy keyword. So let's first take a look at the number of sessions. There's less people that are found using the Udemy keyword because it was just a strategy I tried for a few days for marketing my Udemy course versus the more general audience. There's more sessions because there's organic search discovery every day. Little spike there. And then what we're really paying attention to now is the bounce rate. So the pink bounce rate is for the general kind of users, and the blue bounce rate is for the Udemy users. As you can see, the blue bounce rate is typically a little higher here. We're more concerned where we see more traffic, right? Because there's just like, one or two users from the Udemy keyword here. And so it's actually higher, which means that this kind of strategy for my particular course does not work in general. Now we can keep testing it and see maybe the blue line will start to go down once we've optimized different parts of our campaign. But in general, like the bounce rates are, it's higher or very close. So it's not going to be much of an advantage there. Do try it for your particular campaign though. And the closer you can get to the customers who are looking to purchase from your competitor, the better. So if they're just looking for information about the competitor, they might not be in the purchasing stage. But if you can capture them in the purchasing stage and then compare the bounce rates once you ran around 100, 200 clicks in a campaign, then you are good to go. See you in the next lecture. Bye. Once more, guys, just want to remind you that there is a full deal to get 91% off of the full course. It helps support what me and Joe are doing here on YouTube, trying to provide free, valuable education on Google Analytics. And we can also answer and support you one-on-one in the course. I'll see you there. Now, I want to talk to you guys about why you must focus on non-bounce sessions and how you can kind of build custom segments with Google Analytics to help you measure your results. So first, let's take a look at this sales page that I have without focusing on non-bounces. So this is just all the sessions over all time. And so what we're going to do with this particular sales page is we're going to first take a look at just the sessions. So we don't need the bounce rate for now. And then next, we're going to look at non-bounce sessions. So to look there, you just go to plus new segment, and then under all, just scroll down to N, non-bounce sessions, and then go down to apply. Once you apply it, there. So we have 29% of our sessions are non-bounce, and pretty much that means that 100% minus 29%, or about 70%, is the bounce rate. So we're really interested in how this number changes over time. So it seems pretty steady compared to the overall sessions, right? Because there's spikes in the overall sessions, but it seems like the number of sessions on average for non-bounce sessions is just around 20-ish or so. Sometimes some weeks it's lower, some weeks it's higher. So around 20 sessions. And we want to grow that. We don't care as much about growing this. If we're too focused about just driving low quality traffic, which you'll see a lot of courses about, then we are not really helping our conversions. And the reason is that bounce sessions will never convert. So we have to take a look at the conversion rates only really from the non-bounce sessions. Remember back when we were looking at the math of different case studies, or in the case studies to come up, it's the non-bounce sessions that matter. Okay, so with that in mind, we can go ahead and take a look at another kind of segment, which is if we just get rid of the non-bounce sessions for now, and you can do this for your own sales page, then look at sessions versus bounce rate. And so when we're looking at bringing higher quality traffic, we can tell what the quality of the traffic is based on the bounce rate. And so we can see that when there's these spikes that come up, the traffic quality is down, and there's cyclical changes that we can see, like when a new month starts. For example, to September 1st, a new kind of audience comes. Perhaps some people go back to school because it's a very student-based audience. And so the initial bounce rate is just less familiarity. And that's actually a quite significant change in the bounce rate. So what we're looking at overall then is we can really just take a look at the non-bounce sessions. So we'll go ahead and do that, remove the all sessions, and we just want to grow the non-bounce sessions over time. So when we're looking at our marketing efforts, we'll just try to increase the non-bounce sessions. Another kind of quality metric that we want to look for is the average session duration. So we'll plot the non-bounce sessions versus the average session duration, the session duration being in light blue. And you can notice that while it seems like there's less non-bounce sessions, we're slowly kind of getting the session duration to go up. And that's a positive trend because, say, the difference between spending 3 minutes and 8 minutes means, first of all, the existing users are more engaged, or more people who haven't taken the course already are taking it, and then the new users, so forth. One thing you might want to look at is if you have a website where the product is hosted on the website, so once someone buys the product, they have to come back to the website, then you'll want to compare your non-bounce sessions in general to your non-bounce sessions with only new users. So we're going to actually build a custom segment, and I'm going to show you how to do that. So we'll just go to Add Segment, New Segment, and then we'll go to Behavior. Let's see, Traffic Sources, Date of Session, Conditions, Add Content. Let's see, Bounce. Okay, so users bounces, and then equals to 0. So that means non-bounce. And then we want, actually it's under user type. So we'll just go under users, user type. Just click on the search bar and then click user type. Click on it and then contains, and then new visitor. So it could be exactly matches or contains, and then we'll save this session. And we're going to compare, so we'll call the session non-bounce new visitor. Going to compare non-bounce new visitor to non-bounce in general. And if you remember, it was about 30% of users who were non-bounce. And this is only 20% of visitors who are non-bounce new users. And so what we're kind of interested in is the difference in the average session duration when we're looking at new visitors versus non-bounce sessions in general. So really what we want is just the average session duration. So we'll get rid of sessions in general for now. But taking a look at this, we'll see that while we're still looking at sessions, non-bounce sessions in general is in the blue, and then sessions of non-bounces and new visitors is in the orange. If we go to a daily view, it's always significantly less. So the days where the gap between the orange dot and the blue dot are greater means that there is more returning visitors coming on those days. And so when we're trying to sell our product, which is what advertising is about, right? Because we're not advertising to the existing customers per se, then we want to look and focus on, even more specifically, non-bounce new visitor. And so we want to track the growth of that over time as well. So some of these dips, if we look at the non-bounce new visitors, it's actually quite low, close to 0. And so that's something that we should be concerned about. And then next, we want to look at the average session duration. And so we do want the average session duration to go up over time. If we look at it a week, we can kind of average it out. And yes, it's going up over time, which is a good trend because the more engaged the users are, the more likely we can either market to them more stuff or just sell them more during the session. And the weeks or the days where there's a bigger gap between the non-bounce sessions in general and that the non-bounce sessions new visitors means that the existing visitors are really using the products on those days. So you can see it kind of spike right here, mid-month in August, and then a spike right here at the beginning of the new month. When the duration's closely aligned, it just means that maybe, the returning visitors aren't spending a significant amount more time. And if you're running an online course, then that's concerning, of course, because you want the existing visitors to come back, use the product, and enjoy it. And so when you want to focus on a benchmark to grow, you want to look at non-bounce sessions and new visitors. So that's how you kind of navigate between bounces versus non-bounces and new visitors versus old visitors, and then combining the two into non-bounce, new visitor, and building that segment. I'll see you in the next lecture. A final note, guys. You've gone through about an hour of the content. We have a full 3-hour course. You guys are still going to learn how to decrease costs of advertising with Google Analytics, how to get super accurate data and avoid errors using advanced analytics with event tracking, and very common mistakes that you can avoid in Google Analytics with simple techniques to fix them, as well as case studies of how we have used Google Analytics to boost revenue and impact the bottom line. You know, you're going to get all of that plus more, plus access to ask us any questions one-on-one. Just hit this link in the description and get it for 90% off. I'll see you there. I hope you guys have enjoyed the course so far. Bye-bye.